this recently. Remember I played this for us at the start of group? Because we're always in circles, right? And sometimes men go, why are we in circle?
You have noticed that everything an engine does is in
Do
a
they?
circle.
They ask that?
Yeah. What did I
It's
do?
an interesting question,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, and because we ask them to come in and go clockwise, because some
Right.
guys. And recently I've been bringing it back to like, let's just slow down.
Yeah.
Bring intention back. Like how you pick up, like, can you even see your hand glow
You
in
have
that?
noticed that everything an engine does is in a circle.
Just, I know it can be
And that is because the power of the
super
will is
exaggerated, but it's
always
intentional.
directed
Like
straight.
you can live in this space for a minute, you
Everything
know?
tries to be
But we're
right.
moving. And I always reference men,
The sky is
but I
round.
qualify that I understand it can go for all people, women, whatever anybody identifies as, but all I know is men.
Stars.
Yeah.
So I just always say to the guys, like,
The wind
men, we're fidgeting, we're moving, the legs are moving, we're moving, we're thinking. And where does it come from? And what are you moving towards? And I know I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, no, I think you're talking to everybody at this point in time.
I feel so seen right now.
Everybody's so
I'm always
fidgety.
fidgeting.
But
Always.
can you feel but bringing consciousness to it,
Yeah.
you can start, I mean, because so much of you is like, you're an extraordinary soul. Like, right? I mean, Ben, we talk about Ben more than any other. I mean, you come up in weekly in our home.
God.
So I was asking, so when you are starting group and everyone's fidgeting and all of that, have you thought about starting with a sound bath?
Yeah.
Or have you tried that?
I have not tried it, but very familiar.
I found it, so I have a tribe of women bikers that can be rowdy. And they would come into Topanga to my home for our meetings and couldn't get, one in particular, couldn't get them to come to center and like be focused, and it would drive me nuts because we don't have enough time. It's our, you're scheduling everybody. It's so hard to get them, all of those things.
Oh, yeah.
And finally I called a friend who does sound baths and asked her to show up for us, and it worked every time, and they loved it.
Yeah. I like the idea of it. It's a balance between helping them and making it easy and
Yeah.
having them do the hard thing.
Yeah.
Because what I've realized lately is just starting it now. It's like, you know what? It's time to treat this like a temple, like a dojo. Like when you show up and you walk through the door, no talking, get rid of your devices.
Yeah.
Ben needs to still take his device off his wrist. But
Hard for him.
2 hours to unplug and sit, but I want him to sit in the uncomfort.
Yeah.
Because in there
Yeah.
are all the messages. So it's
sure.
a fine line between, let's take you through this sweet, we'll help you, we'll coddle you, we'll make it all nice and comfy, and then you're good. And have them like sit in it and be uncomfortable and notice the fidgeting and
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
and the reason I invited Jennifer just to see if she wanted to come in, because I thought on the front end there was going to be a little talking, like before we got going. Like
Yeah,
you
just
said,
kind
like,
of shooting the shit.
right. And she, anytime we're like just on this wedding, like anytime we're anywhere, and we didn't know hardly anybody, but you start talking about men's work, and
Nice.
both the man and the woman are leaned in. It's a great conversation piece, and I'm horrible at it. I can say a ton of words. I'm great at a bunch of words.
Horrible in what way?
He's being modest. It's a lie.
Yeah, but I don't even understand in what way.
Because I don't get to it. Because in my mind, I'm seeing what I'm experiencing and what I know of it, but I don't know if it translates to a listener.
I understand
Like
that.
she has said to me, like when I've actually took time to write out what's our vision, what's our mission, what are our business statements. I think they're all eloquent and nail it, but she's, reminding me, people don't understand words like space, container, all the language.
It's true.
For sure.
We're always talking about like if you're trying to reach like through social marketing, media marketing, if you're trying to reach an audience that you haven't touched before, they may not understand what you're saying.
Which is there's a delicate dance there, and it's something that Ben and I are very much involved in that conversation right now. his role on camera has become somebody who helps translate things like that to the layman so that I don't have to dull myself down because I'm learning things and evolving in ways that are important to me. And there are things that he doesn't know. He hasn't been through cancer, right? So, for example, we use this example every time, the difference between diagnosis and prognosis. I never knew the difference until I needed to. Do you know the difference?
Yeah. And yeah.
Do you know the difference? Yeah.
Jennifer's a
So,
survivor.
but Ben will then chime in and be like, I'm sorry, can you please explain to me and our listeners the difference? And then he'll like maybe throw something up online but it's important because you lose people the minute they start saying words that you don't understand. And me included, we were just talking about that on the way here with the podcast that we both listened to. Like,
Right.
start saying things that I have to look up in the dictionary. Like it's work now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Is that still on, or what am I hearing? Is that the speaker still?
Yeah.
He wants you to turn off your
you want me to turn it off?
Only because the
Yeah.
the microphone won't hear that, so I'll do it in here. So now they'll hear what we're hearing.
Can you hear it?
Okay.
You probably can't hear it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. I just it won't be able to pick up on the microphone. It sounds like weird in the background, so I want to make sure it's like vibrant.
So I think to that point of diagnosis and prognosis, what I'm noticing, or the story I'm making up, is that when we start talking about this, when I'm saying weird, like when we're together on this weekend, I think what's always worked for me is people feel into my passion and the authenticity.
Yeah.
And I can draw them in and have this great engagement, but they're probably getting a fraction of what I'm saying. But for some reason, if they feel me, we stay engaged, which to me is important. It's
Everything
cool.
is energy.
Right.
Yeah. And they're
But then
connected.
Jennifer's over here, like, she'll say some things, or even this 20-year-old girl we were talking to at the wedding, and she was digging it, and we got this little circle going with two 20-year-old sorority girls who are the daughters of the people getting married, and their brothers who are like similar age. And it was really this awesome thing. And they were, and one girl in particular, like asked two incredible questions where I was like, whoa, I got to use that. I got to think about that. And she was fully into it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, as you'll see, as we do this, I am not succinct.
That's okay.
I'm either extremely succinct or I am going on and on and on and on. You know, once upon a time, I read teleprompters and had a few thousand people in the audience for a corporate and was delivering messages. So
Yeah.
I can do the thing. I think that's part of the resistance is when I transitioned more into a spiritual path to get away from the things that weren't working and connected with myself. And the more I went there, the more any of that finds its way near me, I get resistant.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, I could be susceptible to that.
Right.
And I don't, that feels dangerous to me.
Interesting. Like it was an addiction almost. Right.
Well, it certainly was. It was a means to an end. It was a pathway to a false positive of feeling valuable and worthy in the world. Oh, if I can get everybody jobs and make everybody money and they pay me for it and give me titles and more stuff and things, that's the validation that
the
I
American
needed.
way.
I needed this.
Yeah.
But the reality was that's not what I needed. I needed to feel it all and go into seeing where all the pains were and all the things that didn't happen so that I could like reimagine myself in a more authentic form. And so I'm bringing that into this space to help men come into contact with that. Not
Yeah.
saying it's the only way or it's the way. It's just a way I've found has really helped me find and call in like anything and everything I ever imagined and didn't even imagine.
For sure.
Like-
That's the good part.
Like a love beyond understanding. So
Yeah. Beautiful.
So it's not an extreme uncomfort in doing it. It's the uncomfort is in what I don't want to take on when Ben in particular and then a few other guys are pushing the social media on my wife as an extraordinary business person is I don't want to take the backlash of the stuff because then I'm going to want to reach through and grab them and go, you have no idea what you're talking about. I'm all love. I'm all authenticity. My driver behind all this is to help men shift their lives. And then that helps the people that they love and around them, and that's my contribution to the planet. And it's tiny, but it matters and it feels great.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing the social media thing so you all see me and then I did all that.
Pick me apart.
Right.
Yeah.
It puts me right back to where I was, and I know that didn't work.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be part of, and no offense, because wonderful, they're doing great things, but those that are really commercializing and looking to drive money and grow it, whereas I just want to do my part. But I also do need to make some money to contribute to my household. So anyway, that's sort of some backdrop of where the resistance is. If that's a good example of how I can use a bunch of words, talk about it, but I don't know if I've conveeyed the message clearly.
I think it's loud and clear.
That's the funny part.
for
Is
sure.
you did and you do. Yeah, no,
Like-
it's good. There's no right way to say it, man.
I know, but just we'll talk, we'll lay in bed and we'll talk, and I'll go like 12 minutes of like all this stuff, and luckily Jennifer's like, loves me for it and appreciates it, and then she'll come in like 1 minute, say her part,
I guess I
and it's the
need masculine.
opposite. It's way more her masculine in that space, and I'm this like ranting feminine.
But that's how we understand ourselves, is using our voices. And that's a safe place to do it. Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing bad about that. In fact, it's part of my healing to use my voice more, which is one of the biggest reasons we're here
Yeah.
doing this now.
Cool.
Yeah. I think it's all very good.
Everything.
Everything is everything.
I haven't said that yet once.
Do you usually say that?
That is his.
Oh.
That's the thing that we all. Yeah.
Yeah, but you could, you take the language from conscious man and infuse it anywhere. Like, great.
Yeah.
If that's what
I-
you're saying, that there's any concern about that, like.
No concern. I just I just mean like, it's just weird that I haven't said it yet, because it's forever relevant in everything we've done so far.
There's so much alignment in this room right now.
Yeah.
The name of your group is Conscious Man. A quest called Tribe, my motorcycle tribe. Life is a quest to find your tribe. That's the intention of the name. On the website, it's always had consciousness over convenience. Like, that's our mission statement, right? Consciousness and moving with intention, living with intention. And then what was the other thing? You came to Vegas to help me bring my bike back. And I said something to you, and you were like, "Can I play something for you?" And you played him doing like the opening ceremony.
I secretly recorded you one time doing the poem
oh
at
no!
a weekend
To
retreat,
just call you out.
and I played it for her.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
That's what
it aligned with something that
Yeah.
I said and that I often say. Like, it was you and I were saying the exact same thing, and
yeah.
he's like, "I've never heard anyone else."
Mm.
What's the core of it? Remind me,
Well, the
like the gist of it.
The core of it is what you ache for, and that I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care how much money you make. I don't
Right.
care about any of that. I think that's where you were talking something in that space, and I was like, oh, you got to hear this, because that's what it is. It's the human. It's human. It's the most human poem I've ever heard in my life.
Can't remember exactly. Forgive me for that, but anyway, there's
It's
a lot
an
of alignment
invitation.
in this
It's
room.
called the invitation because
Yeah.
it's an invitation. Is what is it? When we're saying, well, what it is, it's an invitation to go inward and to examine things in a more conscious way.
Yeah, and
So this is me reading it out a weekend.
Yeah, I filmed you. You read it at a
Oh,
weekend.
wow.
and
you didn't
You
see
should
your
send it to me.
face.
I've never
I don't
seen
think
it.
I was going to
s-
surprise you one day, but now you know I have it. So I'll just.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No.
What I just did.
It's nothing. Actually, it's good for the website or something. Something of that nature would be good for. But
Yeah, I trust Ben
I'll play it.
implicitly. So
Aw.
it was amazing though. I was at a wedding, and the girls read the poem at the wedding for the couple getting married. I was like, I've never heard this poem anywhere outside of your mouth.
Wow.
Not once. And when the moment came for her to say yes, she just said yes. And I was crawling inside, because he delivers the word yes with a howl. He screams it, and his whole body rumbles when he says it. And I've never heard it any other way but that. And so you should just know that you really share that poem in a special way that feels really good. That feels like the way it should be read. Yeah, it's very, very cool. Very different.
thank you.
Yeah. It's like I kind of want to dive into, because we're just talking about it now, the group, and just how and why it came to be. And I know you were in a group before that, in Wayne's group. So what led you to men's work in the first place?
So this is has some element of selfishness about me.
Okay.
Is that right? What led me there was just the sense of lostness and stuckness. I mean, that's the kind of the bigger picture. And it was specifically a man who was starting his community of men recognized that I think he just saw me. He saw a guy in his late 20s who was successful and had all the things, stuff and things at fairly early age. But I think he could see some of the pain or some of the lack of authenticity. You know, you could see the mask and the armor, that I was making it about all the stuff, you know, the nice clothes and the emblem on the cars and the white picket fence and the expensive home and all the things. And so he saw it and invited me to come sit with guys. And externally, I was super resistant. Like, no, I'm not going to go sit with a bunch of men and talk about stuff. What do you guys do? Get naked? You know, like, no thanks.
Cultish.
Internally, I was, my inside voice was like, oh, thank God. Yeah, please be the thing I'm looking for, even though I don't know what I'm looking for. So that's where it literally started.
Was there a life event or something that happened that got you in that place of feeling stuck? Or was it, did I misquote you? Did you say stuck?
Yeah, stuck. Stuck's a word that we use a lot. Like, that typically resonates with men. Like, if we are going back to what we were talking about, using a lot of words and trying to talk about stuff, and then as soon as I circle around and go, like, stuck, you ever feel stuck? A guy will usually go, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I do. I can feel stuck.
And did something happen in your life that caused you to feel stuck when you were approached about this sitting with men and sharing?
Well, in hindsight, I understand it all. In that moment, I didn't know. I definitely didn't know. In fact, it was very frustrating because he would use the word, it is. You'll learn what it is. And I'd go, what is this it is? What is it is? And the thing is it is never really understood, maybe ever. We're always chasing the it is, but we're connecting dots that help. So at that time, I had no idea what stuck was. Now I look back and I understand that the stuckness was related to the trauma of neither mother or father being around, and in particular, mother, and the coming and the going in my life, and what that did to my nervous system and how it wired me to not feel safe and steady. And so to look outward to find, and I think a lot of guys do this, look outward to find the things that are going to help to divine them and make them feel valuable. And it's a false positive sense of safety.
For sure.
It may work, but so anyway, did that create stuckness? Well, the stuckness came from just not knowing what was going on. Now I look back and I can talk about it, forever. But then it felt stuck because I couldn't quite get, why do I have this feeling in my gut? Why do various parts of my chakras seize up, and I don't even understand what chakras are, at that time. And so all of it just, the gears grind down and just feels stuck and just looking for some answers. And so, that was the stuckness. Yeah. And so this guy saw that. Like, I can now see it in men very easily. I don't know what the specifics are, which is the fun of bringing them into the lab or into the dojo and do the work and start to help them to bring things out so we can all see it. And then maybe they find where their stuckness was.
In my experience, my personal experience, you're helping them. If you don't deal with that now, you're going to deal with it later in your life, in your body, and you're saving people from illness, from a chronic disease situation. Yeah, I tip my hat to you. That's very cool.
Yeah, I love that you use the word chronic, a chronic disease.
Yeah,
because the reality is there's already dis-ease, right? The dis-ease is in the body.
You're carrying it.
It's just to what level. And then it becomes more chronic as the longer we carry it.
Yeah.
It wears down on us one way or another. So
and then
that usually results in simple words that we use like messes. Like I'll ask the guys, where are the messes that you made? Where were you messy this week? And that can create a head clog of like, what does messy mean?
Right.
Well, messy means these issues you're creating for yourself and because of the dis-ease that you're carrying in your body. So yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
It can be very chronic and it can be debilitating.
Absolutely.
And therein lies, we're moving our way towards this stuckness word.
Yeah.
And so here were all the things exteriorly. You've got the beautiful partner. You've got an educated partner. You've got a wonderful home. You've got a full bank account. You've got a healthy body. You've got great friends, and on it goes, yet you feel stuck, like something's not working, something's not right. And so therein lies the work to dig in and try to start beginning to find out, why is everything starting to slow down and get stuck?
And do you, when you host these groups and in hopes with this intention, do you connect to the earth while you're doing it? I find that people are out of sync with their circadian rhythm. I'm just curious if you find that helpful in your process to actually, it's almost like a caveman theory, right? But it's actual that we need that. We need to connect to the earth.
You're talking about literally grounding.
Yeah, earthing. Yeah. Does that help you bring them into focus and start relaxing enough to do that inner work?
Yeah, I love it. When we focus on it, and when I focus on it as the leader or as the guide, it does help. But as we were talking earlier casually, the time is, we only have so much time. One of the funny sayings over the years is, there's so little time, so many men. It's just so hard. Our 2 hours are gone in 15 minutes.
Right.
And it's so hard
Yeah.
to stop us each night. But yeah, infusing some of the spirituality, if it's fair to call like connecting with the earth, the spirituality part.
Sure.
Because there's just the raw manness of masculine and feminine, and what are those things, and identifying with them, and then how do you weave the spirituality into it, and ceremony and traditions and rituals, and so connecting with the earth always helps. So on the weekends, the weekend intensives, we'll spend more time feeling into nature and what's around us,
Very cool.
which is why we create a space like this that we're sitting in, is to remind us, put the elements up and onward. So, but it's a great reminder. Thank you. The importance of guiding the men, and there's a fine line. And for those that listen to this, these are the parts of the things I get worried about saying publicly, for what might come back for it. But it's like men. There's a fine line between when it looks. I think the most common word is woo-wooey, when it's a little too woo-woo. But for those of us that sit in it, understand that it's helpful. It really matters. Like grounding really matters. But when you've got a guy that's nowhere near a spiritual path, hasn't been exposed to that, it can turn him off. It can turn him away
Very quickly.
right.
Yeah.
So it's a nuance of like, hey, this. And, I mean, it's a rawest form. This is just dudes sitting together talking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
That's way over here.
Yeah.
And then there's this over here where it's like we're connecting as souls, as beings, and connecting with the oneness and all of the things that we're tied to that we're unaware of, and it's beautiful. And then how do you like find somewhere in here? So grounding to the earth is wonderful. I invite them to do that, and it's their choice.
It's medicine that's right in front of you. Anytime. It's funny, my daughter, she did a post about me when I was going through stage 4 cancer, and her words had said, something to the effect of some things that I've taught her, and one of them that was so powerful to hear my daughter say as an adult was that I taught her how to find her center by going to the earth. And I feel like when that was weird. The sound just went into stereo. When when you can dig deep, when you know that you're flailing and you're hovering above and you're not connecting to anything, and you might not feel it instantly, the answer, but when you can find it, like, oh, I need to sit outside. That's all you have. Wow, what a quick fix, right? Just sit there. Don't feel the pressure to do anything else. In fact, you're not supposed to. And for some reason, that's all it takes, right? And we know the reason. It's the energy. It's the rhythm of the earth. It's the rhythm of the people. It's in the land.
Yeah.
Nature is ancient. It's all right there for us. So anyway.
And that word, are we just riffing this wide open, or am I?
Well, I
want to
say something really quick.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Art of Human Maintenance.
Welcome, Chris.
Thank
Chris
you for having
Christopherson.
us in your space.
Yes.
It's really a fantastic space, both of you.
Both of you,
Chris's
yes.
wife is here off camera right now, and what a lovely being she is. Thank you for having us. Yeah. And I do love the way we started. There's no formality.
No, there's no rules.
No.
You know, sometimes we got to wrangle things, but I just like just getting into it and just having conversations. It's what it's about, you know?
It's the human condition, and that's what we do
Yeah.
when we're, like, you know, together learning each other.
Yeah.
Just riff, just go. And there's a lot between the layers of all of us in this room. There's a lot to go with. So,
I mean, even in group, the night always finds itself. It always finds itself.
so tell us, Ben, you
Night
were
always finds
introducing him, and I think we
Yeah.
go ahead and do that again, will you, please, for me?
Chris Christopherson, welcome to the podcast. I want to just give people at home a quick glimpse into who and why you are who you are, and what came to, like, where you are today, what led to that. And so I want to dive back into, if we're cool to do it for a second, what life was like before you found men's group. You kind of alluded to it a little bit, but like what your mindset was every day. What was it? Just caffeine and business, rinse, repeat? What was because a lot of guys live that as their daily life. They just get up, they go alpha their way through things, and they come home and do it again the next day. They don't connect to anything. They don't slow down. They don't participate in emotional connection with their families or friends or anything. And so I'm wondering how much of that was you before, and what, after that guy invited you to the night, what caused you to come back? What caused you to be like, yeah, this is what I need. I need this. Because most guys don't know they need it. They don't even know to look for it. They don't know any of that.
Yeah.
And so I really think it's important to dive into why men's work is so important. And for those at home, he leads a men's community called Conscious Man Community.
Yeah. Thanks. There's a lot to unpack there, but I would say that if I track back to what was I doing, what did it look like then, I think there was really solid intention. I think that intention I believe that most men, I believe in the goodness of intention. But then right behind it, I'll speak for myself, and it has seemed to be true for a lot of men that I've come into contact with that have been willing to lean in and do some work, and that is unconsciousness. So this is just coming to me right now in this conversation for the first time, but it's unconscious intention. So the intention was, build a family, create financial security, be a good guy, have babies, take care of the kids, raise them to be good, and do good things along the way. And you've contributed to the planet, and I feel like a worthy human.
Unconscious intention.
Unconscious
That's a
intention.
really
Yeah, right.
powerful statement right there. I think it's sort of everyone's go-to, like what is
Default.
it? Jerk. Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was all working until it wasn't working. And so this is kind of those woo-woo-y statements of like, we don't know what we're doing until we know what we're doing. Like, remember you guys used to give me a hard time and say like they were criticisms or stuff like.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, unconscious intention. So that's where things were as I look back. And so then you were saying it's like what changed and what was I experiencing when I went to the group for a first time and sat with men. And it was just sort of trusting and listening to this inner voice. And for one of the first times I can remember, recognizing that that inner voice mattered. I trusted it. And going, oh my gosh, wait a second. There's me sitting here experiencing this and having judgment on all the guys in here and what this could be about, even though I don't quite understand it. Then there was the voice that was saying, this is important. This is unique. This isn't just traditional therapy, which is obviously wonderful. But this is something bigger, something deeper, and this could be helpful, because why are you having all these judgments and why are you resistant? So, or do you want to be a man who is open and willing to expand, or do you want to contract and close, and where will that lead you? And those were thoughts that were starting to formulate. So that led me to just think, maybe I should listen to the inside voice and just trust it and have faith that there's something here. And then the thing that was significant, because there were several years being part of that men's community, and the men were so patient with me because I was so difficult, but I was there, and I think I was accepted and appreciated because I showed up. I kept coming.
Why were you difficult? Resistant?
Yeah, resistant.
Okay.
I was just the guy that didn't want it. As long as I could control the room and have them buy my story, everything was okay.
Is that something you witness a lot in newbies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sounds like
All the time.
Like every guy that walks into a room, if they're slightly disconnected.
Yeah. And trust is just so, such a big issue for men. Like, it's up there in the top 3. If I just think about it quickly, like, trust, not knowing what men are capable of, not knowing what their capacity is, and not having intimacy with them creates a tremendous amount of risk. And so therefore, where the risk is high, the trust is low. And so all that was happening for me.
Wow.
And so, I wouldn't listen. And this many years later, 28 years later, now if I'm sitting in a room full of men, I'm listening to everything, as Ben always notes, because I want to learn from all of them, no matter what stage or where they're at in the continuum of the path or their work. There's just so much available every night. And then, but what shifted was my wife passing of cancer. And this is beautifully represented on the website by somebody who knows how to write things better than me, a marketing person. But it really captures the essence of it. And in that moment, there was several weeks of lying around the house and staring at the ceiling and just contemplating all the things. What is the meaning of life? What am I doing? What do I do with my 2 boys now? Why do I have all this stuff and things? And it really, everything was accelerated in terms of to the forefront. And so in short, I just decided that I didn't want that lifestyle anymore. I just literally was, and then it sort of became sensationalized. I really started thinking, oh, this is going to be cool. Like, I'm going to be that guy who gets rid of everything, stops making money and gets rid of all of his belongings and just trusts that something will happen. And so this many years later, it's easy to say, like, oh my gosh, look how that all worked. And I'm more fulfilled now than ever. But anyway, so that was the very significant moment that changed everything. Which
Can we pause for a second? What's your wife's name that passed?
Cindy.
Cindy.
With an S.
This is for Cindy. I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Sweet.
I don't mean to interrupt your flow. Go ahead. I just wanted to.
No, it's nice that you do that.
Just give her a moment there. That's a big trauma for.
Yeah.
Even hearing the story is.
Yeah, and it feeds my trauma.
Yeah.
Without staying too centered on that or me around that. But it was this coming and going of mom.
Yeah.
And never knowing for how long.
Wow, the connection
Of your mom, to be clear.
My mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then carrying that through in relationships with
deep.
Wonderful women, but always worried about that coming and going. And then to be in a relationship that felt the safest at that time that I knew of, And then still, when everything was going well, and I'm as safe as I can be, and I'm doing all the things, the unconscious intention of handling it all, and then this 36-year-old woman, healthy as can be.
Was
Wait.
it what type of cancer? Do you mind?
Colon cancer.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it was just
Yeah.
a teeny tiny little lump in the groin area that she ignored for a few months, thinking, oh, it'll just go away. I had no concept other than, hey, go to the doctor. That'd be good.
Right.
And then 27 months later, she was gone. And painful as it was, it also was beautiful in many, many ways. But it was just the ultimate. There she goes. She's gone.
Yeah.
She left me.
Yeah.
That was my
That
selfish story.
reinforced your childhood stuff.
Which led me back to, we can do all the things according to the best of plans and intentions, conscious or not, unconscious, and still we can't control what's going to happen in the greater scheme of life. And so that had me go, so why am I going to keep charging down this same path? Like, there's got to be a different path. There's got to be something out there for us. So I shared that with my boys and told them that, I had no idea what was going to happen, but I loved them. They'll always be safe, and we're going to find out. And, looking back now, it can become a very emotional experience to realize, whoa, like,
Yeah.
And I often tell my current wife, my best friend, most amazing soul partner, that I always wonder, did I make a mistake? Did I put us in harm's way by moving away from all of the securities of life? And then I always come back around to knowing, well, of course not.
Okay.
Because so many wonderful things have happened.
You mean your current path of hosting Conscious Man versus being the big man that everyone.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a beautiful
Now, what
story.
do you attribute your? It is a beautiful story. And what do you attribute your? Even though you were unsure what was going to happen, what do you attribute your center pillar of, like, but I'm doing it anyway? I'm charging forward. My 2 kids. You've told the story before. You didn't say it here, but I'll say it. Sleeping on a couch with your boys and just barreling through life, just finding a way, stumbling through it and finding your way. What was the guiding light? What is that thing that let you do that took you to now?
Yeah.
Sitting at this table, like, what the hell was that? Because that's damn near impossible to have that level of unclear clarity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an easy answer. This is one where I don't have a lot of words, which is great, but it was the men. Just as you pose that question now, that becomes very clear to me. That's what it was.
The men, okay.
Yeah, having the men around me, holding me up.
So at that point, when you were you were already in group at that point.
Oh yeah, I'd been in group for years.
When did you start? How many years? I mean, I know, but for
I'm 56 now. I was 28 when I first started getting involved in
Wow.
men's work at some level.
Yeah.
And so since passing was in 2000, February 3rd, 2015. So I was 46. And I had been around and in a group for better part of 2 decades at that point.
Is there anything that you want to say now that is off the table, or
No, this
you-
has always
you feel
been
safe?
Yeah,
and-
yeah. This has been my approach. I think this
Okay.
is part of what is differentiating maybe about our community and in this space is. I hope this, in my mind, this is a part of humility. It's
Yeah.
not the level of humility that I'm striving for that I see my wife exhibit as a leader. So there's levels. I'm constantly reminding myself of humility, but this is part of the humility is to reveal it all, and this is just who I am, and this is what we do, and
Great.
and I think the men can see that and are drawn to that at some level. So
Good. Okay.
nothing's off the table.
So from the point of being in, what was that group's name called? The one, Wayne's group. What was that?
Better men.
Better Men.
Yeah.
Okay. And so from that point, what led you to starting your own men's group?
Yeah. Well, so when I was in that transition of Sin's passing and also letting go of or moving away from the lifestyle that I had been used to at that point. I just started going to various studios, like just being open, which was an edge for me, pushing an edge into an uncomfortable space of, let me just find places to go to and experiences to have, because that's where the answers are going to reveal themselves. And I had enough financial security to afford myself some time to do these things. And so I ended up in a studio on I'm not sure how much to go into personally on my story, but just doing that helped me see things that were feeling good and that looked good to me. It helped illuminate further where I didn't want to be. I think that was probably more important, but ended up in a teepee studio and having an experience there that in a breath session where there was a lot of emotion pouring out of me, and I became clear, like, I don't believe I ever want to work in a classic corporate environment again, and money is no longer my supply, but I don't know what my supply is. So then I got clear. Then it helped when I was starting to go to other meditation studios or experiences and events and workshops. I then understood my intention was to be more about, well, what does work for me? What is my supply? I know it's not monetary, and I know it's not things, but I don't know what it is. And so that
Supply
helped.
in the sense of like what fuels you.
What fills me?
Yeah.
Yeah, what lights
It's
my
a cool.
fire?
I've never heard it said like that. It's a cool word.
Yeah, so I've always said,
Supply.
like, the supply, and it's still kind of like, it's a little nebulous, like sometimes, like when a man offers something, or I watch interactions between them and I see the love exchanged, or I see the vulnerability and the power and the, all the messiness too. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, when another guy puts his hand on another man's heart and pulls him in and embraces him, and he's like, I love you and thank you. And obviously when it's directed towards me, it's real easy to feel it. When you hear a man say, you've saved my life,
Right.
you've
Yeah.
changed my life, and that's, there's
That's
humbling
everything.
moments of, what, like, really? Like, I know I'm hoping to do that, I know it's somewhere in the formula, but then when it actually happens in the moment, it's like, whoa, that's my supply, like, whatever that's
And it's a
doing.
lesson to receive those, right? We're not
Oh, gosh,
we're not
yes.
taught to receive gracefully anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever were taught to receive gracefully, but it's such an important part of the yin and yang. Like you can't just give all the time. You have to receive and to be whole.
If
right?
there's no receiving, there's no giving.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
That's very well said. Yeah.
we have lots of hidden little sayings all throughout. I say we because I don't know if I originate them or another guy
Right.
did or
It
where they've
doesn't
come
matter.
from.
It
It doesn't
doesn't
matter.
matter.
They just
Yeah.
exist in us. So
Yeah.
when I reference we, I'm talking about guys.
collective.
The collective over the years.
Yeah. And it trickles, right? Because you're working with these men who then go home and share these things, hopefully, and practice them.
Yeah.
And then they come
Yeah.
back with new stuff. And so maybe someone's daughter brought that to them, who brought that to your group. right?
Which
It's
again
so
is the
beautiful.
supply.
Yeah.
That's the supply.
It's so beautiful.
When you hear these,
love
when I
it.
hear these stories or witness these things or watch the relationships evolve with the guys, in group, outside of group,
Yeah.
it's just this feeling of filled up. The same way once upon a time it was like a bonus check for $50,000 that was like, oh, that just went in the bank. That feels so good.
Yeah.
This is so much.
It's your spiritual
Yeah,
bank.
I don't want to compare it. That's not. That's
No,
such
it's
a low
your
vibration
spiritual-
word, but
yeah,
it's a
your
spiritual,
spiritual
thing.
bank.
But it's showing your supply shift,
Yeah.
because that's pretty. What's not the word? What's
It's a
the word?
great way to
Contrast?
connect.
Right. No, I just mean to see the hindsight of your supply shift is pretty incredible. Like to see that it was what most men's supplies, which is money, things, providing, showing what you can do, the house, the whole thing, to the ultimate shift that you've had. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So I'm feeling like this is a lot about me, and should be a
That's
lot
kind
about
of-
we shifting to the men and the work.
Well, we will be, but
Okay.
but it's important to also talk about you, because I wouldn't be here talking to you without you.
Right.
I wouldn't have learned the things I learned in my life without you. I wouldn't have made the shifts I've made in my life without you. I wouldn't have been told the shifts I've made in my life that I've been recognized for without you. So, yeah, a lot of it's about you. You're really fucking important.
I really don't think Ben and I would be friends without you, quite honestly.
Yeah, that's probably
he's-
true.
Yeah.
No, you were a dick. No, I'm kidding.
He's my daughter's age.
Yeah.
And when we first met, I was like, I was very, I didn't understand him. I wasn't connecting to him. I completely misread him. And over time, what a joy to learn I was wrong. Like, what a phenomenal young man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, get a little teary thinking about it, Ben.
Love you.
Brought a lot to my life.
We're going to flip this
So have
thing
you.
on its head.
Yeah, get out of here.
This is
Make it
Ben's
about
episode.
Not happening.
Yeah,
Ben's,
so
Ben's
yeah,
journey in men's work.
you have
Like
you,
that would be what the audience could, right? This is the testimony, like not the guy who leads it, the guy who came into it
Absolutely.
and has been watching what's happened
like,
for him, answers a
all
lot of
this.
questions.
Yeah. No, Ben is,
We're here.
yeah.
That's the whole point. We're
And
here.
yet still, after 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
we've only made it that far.
I know.
You're going to be,
It's life. You got me for life. I'm a lifer.
yeah.
I'm a lifer. I do want to get into the other side that you mentioned a little bit, like the, like what do you attribute? That's not the way I want to say that. Hold on. I'm trying to approach. I want to dive into, like, the men in the outside world. We always talk about when we're in a group. We're like, when you get out in the real world, be careful how you bring, what we've learned here, what we've talked about, how we're connecting to the outside world, because people aren't used to this.
Yeah.
How do we make that more approachable? How do we approach? Because what is it? You said 0.000. Now, what is the thing of men that are in this?
Right. 0.0005% of the men, in the world maybe are really diving in deep and doing this kind of work, but it's not founded on science or specific data. It's just a estimation.
Right. No, of course. But I'm just
It's
trying
making
to,
a point that it's
Yeah.
small. It's still a small percentage, even though more are open to it now. And
Yeah.
kudos to all the men who are willing to go out and lead and bring this to the world, because there's a lot now, and it's wonderful. Whatever it
seems
looks
a
like.
big hurdle, yeah, to find men open enough.
Oh, I think that's where I was going to go. Is what do you attribute the way men are by default? Like the man you come across at the gas station or your neighbor or whatever, that you're like, oh, you're just. What do you attribute the way men are to? Like, what is it? Is it movies? Is it our favorite superheroes? Is it our favorite actor? Is it just what is? Is it just DNA? Is it tribal? Like, what's the not tribal? What's the word? Primal. Like the need to be primal. We think we have to be primal and have to be alpha. Like what is that common narrative that we all attach ourselves to as men that we think we have to be, versus being powerful is being vulnerable. Tapping into who you are and slowing down is vulnerable. Expressing love for people is vulnerable and powerful. Why is the opposite the normal? The norm?
Without getting into the science of it too much, because I don't know that I would be the guy to answer that in a really responsible way. I just believe it's just the way we're wired. It's just what we've seen. It's what's been modeled, what's been around. I mean, look at yourself. Like, what was your resistance? What was the barrier between the man that you were who showed up the first time versus several years later the man that you are now? It was just conditioning. It's what you saw. It's what you experienced. And therefore, it's what we believe we're supposed to be. And not really, it's that unconsciousness and not getting in touch with and moving into, you just brought up the word vulnerability, that vulnerability. And this young lady at this wedding this last weekend asked this question exactly, or was orbiting around it when she asked, what is the barrier that men come up against that doesn't allow them to move into the man that they want to be? Is the essence of what she was saying, like move into this more expansive kind of man. And so I asked a 20-year-old young man that was there the question. I said, well, let's not ask me. Let's ask this young man as an example. And I was, meanwhile, bought me time to really think about, what is the succinct, clever answer?
Stalling.
And I think he answered it perfectly, which feeds into what you just said. And he said, not being able to be vulnerable, not understanding where the boundaries of, now I'm expanding on it, not understanding where the boundaries of vulnerability are. Where does it start? How far can I move into it? And the fear, the doubt and the fear of what that could then mean in terms of who I am and how people see me. So it's just a societal cyclical thing.
It's fear.
Yeah, but fear is
It's all fear-based.
Fear-based for sure.
Yeah.
And fear is what we ultimately get to in most councils, most our weekly, nightly councils is, fear will often come up when we're exploring where a guy is and what he's struggling with. Like, but what's the fear? What are you afraid of? And
What's the percentage of men that do not return after a first session?
well, the process, first of all, we've explored a lot of different ways to bring a guy into it, and now we just will not do a one-night sit-in. One, it doesn't honor, and if we get back to, these are just some basics within Conscious Man, but the two guiding principles for us are safe and sacred.
Yeah,
And they're big words.
for sure. The
I mean,
biggest.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
one might define it as, and another defines it differently, but we're probably all feeding into something that honors it in some way. And so part of safety is the men that are committed and they're in a tribe of men to know that somebody's not just going to come in and experience them for a night and take away whatever it is we have going on and then move back out into the world with it. That doesn't feel very safe.
Right.
Nor is it sacred. And so
Right,
the space
right.
that we have is very safe and sacred. But on the other hand, how do you expose this to a man and give him a taste or a flavor of it so that he can decide if it resonates for him and if he wants to then ultimately commit to the men
Yeah.
for some extended period of time. And so it's a 1 month process.
The bedding process.
Yeah. So I ask for 1 month. If a guy's open after I have a conversation with him or one of the men, obviously referrals are important because there's a level of trust
For
already.
sure.
And then I invite him for a month. Come sit
like
for a
that.
month. Because what you experience one night that on night one might have you going, first of all, 90+% of guys will experience something curiously connective for them that will have them feeling like, I think I'm home. Something good's here.
Yeah.
Or whatever the labels are,
Yeah.
and drive home vibrating in a space of like, ooh, I want more of that. I
Yeah.
found it. Cool. And then right beneath that is the questioning of, wait a minute, then something must be up. That
Right.
I can't really trust this, can I? That's the dynamic. But that might come from seeing the depth of where we go, seeing the brotherhood of how the men love each other and truly care for each other, the deliveries that are really sharp and very honest and authentic. And so if you come in and experience that and then go, hey, I'm in, and then you come the next week and then you experience something a little different where it's like two guys might go at it, and which is fantastic. That's where the magic is when it's not just super chummy and loving. The loving is great, but the work is
But
when it
get
gets
real.
uncomfortable and we're moving some stuff around. We're not just solving because we love to solve.
It's that part of what we always talk about, which is, are you willing to risk the relationship to say the hard thing? And most guys aren't. They might, but they'll come out as, an insult, like a general, like "fuck you," whatever. This, but to slow down and really take your time and deliver a message that's true
Yeah.
is hard. And so, our 3 rules in group: it's no violence,
Right.
no
No physical violence.
no physical violence, no drugs and alcohol, and whatever we say stays in here. It stays here.
Because all 3 of those feed safe and sacred.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a level of consciousness over convenience that reigns over everything there, right? It's convenient. It's easy to just blurt out your old, like, whatever. But it sounds like you have to be aware of what you're bringing to the circle. And a month is, like, what an incredible solution to the question that I had. A month, you just start unpacking things.
Yeah.
And you really then start to feel the need. Like, a month isn't not long enough. Like, I understand that.
Yeah.
But it gives you enough experiences to see any kind of consistency. Because the first night, more often than not, it's a positive experience in some way, shape, or form. It's warming, it's positive, and eyebrow raises, and all those curious, wonderful feelings start happening.
You get ignited.
Right. But then there is the questioning of, but how consistent is that? And can I really trust it? So when you come for a month and start seeing it, that's enough time and it's also enough time to feel into the men, the variety of characters in the room, their various ages and shapes and sizes and what they look like and how they sound. And you get enough sound bite to go, okay, I can commit to this for 6 months.
And do you max it? How many men can be a part of it at one time?
12 in a group. Any more than 12, there's the potential that guys might hide out or get quiet, and they won't be seen or heard, and that's the opposite of what we want. And also, on any given night, there's a minimum of 2 or 3 guys that aren't there. Sometimes it could even be 4, 5, or 6. So if you only have a group of 8 and you get a handful that are out, you don't really have a group going on. You have, three guys. And those can still be great. 3, 4, 5 guys sitting there. We call them micro councils or micro tribes. Those are great nights. They're potent. They go really deep. But yeah, so 12 is the maximum number.
So then how do people come in? Like if it's 12 people, how do you cycle? Is it a 6-month program and then maybe new people come in, or is it just 12 people for the next 10 years?
Yeah, 12 people until a seat's available.
Wow.
And so as long as there's a night available, so there's 4 nights, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then there's a virtual group, which has been a complete surprise at how incredible that's been. Those guys are as close as any of the other in-person groups.
Nice.
But no, it's just as long as there's a seat available, then you have an opportunity to join that group.
Very cool.
But if there's 12 guys in there, it's just closed. But I've never had 5 groups of 12 guys at one time, and so there's nothing available.
So you have a Monday group, you have a Wednesday, like it's like that, and 12 per group.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
Yep.
I get it.
I've always wondered this, how do you ensure that all the members all the guys in the group feel heard and supported? Because that's a tricky one. Because some guys really need something, and other guys are feeling it, and we'll go on tangents, and it'll be, instead of 10, 12 minutes, it ends up being 45 minutes on one guy, which is awesome because we get a lot out of it, and we're all getting something. But how do you, because I know sometimes you'll go home and you are such, I don't know if the empath is the right word, but you so feel the what guy might not have gotten something. Like you will go home torturing yourself about what someone might not have gotten from group. So what's your process for like realizing that and sort of putting attention on certain guys and realize, because something else you do very well as well is you'll see one guy going through something and you'll find the tie to another guy's reality and tie them together and bring it, and then it becomes a whole new explosion of conversation. Like what's your process for that, and how do you have that instinct to do that? What is that?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that is instinct. There's no doubt. It's just experience being around it, and so intuition and instinct are just like in a lot of things that people are passionate about and that they lead. You got to trust that. So that's a simple answer.
For you.
Yeah.
Not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
There's a spiritual angle there. Sorry.
And therein lies where why the men are so important, and trust the men, and we all lean on each other. And I'm not the guru or the teacher. I'm another man in the circle, and I'm a facilitator, and I'm not diminishing the value. I understand my value. There's great value. And the reality is I may be off. I may be missing something. And, Ben it does great as an example of you might say, hold on a second, Chris, cool. I want to and he, right. And the guys, and the longer they're there, the more they do this stuff. And that gives me a moment to, feel into. It's another one of those, what does that mean? Feel into. It's like, I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, let me feel into that for a second. She's like, what is that exactly when you're feeling into it?
Connecting.
For a pragmatic, practical person. It's so connecting to it and seeing where it lands. And then it's a processing, right, to come to discernment process, to come to a decision, I guess. And so a lot of it is intuition. And that's one of the things that is super enjoyable at this age and stage in this men's work for me is I just trust it more and more. It's like it is no right or wrong, like Rumi speaks of. It just, none of it feels right or wrong. The only right or wrong is in my own head, as Ben was saying, driving home going, oh gosh, I missed an opportunity to do that, or I could have done this. And I'm getting better at letting that go and just realizing it was exactly as it needed to be at any given moment. But so there is no real clear, perfect answer, especially if, like, as an example, there was a making of a certification of, process of upcoming leaders or guys that are interested in it. There's just little words and tidbits like I gave you the other night when you were going to lead group. It's like just food for thought. When you're about to respond or make a decision to guide the circle somewhere, take one extra breath, one extra pause, unless you're crystal clear. Like if it comes to you and you're like, this is what I feel and I'm doing it. But if you're like looking for it, just take an extra moment and just wait. The men usually take care of it.
So speaking of that, because that's important in feeling out what the group needs, how do you balance addressing one man's needs versus what the group needs in general? Like, what's that look like? Because you can tell when guys are checking out. When guys are kind of like scratching their head or getting, trying to readjust or whatever, they're not locked in.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, let me see. I think what we were talking about just a moment ago ties into this a bit.
Totally.
So I see how you got there.
Yeah.
So let me just continue to riff off the last one because when you're talking about like how do you make sure like a guy gets what he needs or know when to switch or it's that saying that we offer that there's something available for every single guy sitting here every single minute you're here. If you are really wanting and desiring and are devoted to the process of evolving, then don't miss a moment because there's something available all the time.
Yeah.
So if it's not, a guy's not on the stick's not on him, he's not the center of energy, the guys on the periphery are getting plenty. And that's a really important point of emphasis to remind all of us when we're sitting in circles with men is you can show up for weeks and not have the stick be on you and have the center of energy on you, but you can learn a ton. Because you're having the dialogue in your head the same way we do with the monkey mind, the inner critic, all the things that we've talked about in the modules we work on. I mean, we're sitting there, every man in there is having his own group in his head. And then sometimes he's just a little bit more locked into the specifics of what we're doing and another guy. But something's happening. And then you can take inventory of, like, what's that about? Like, what's going on in my head now? But you're relating to the guy who's telling his story. Or 5 guys are giving him feedback and you're like, oh my God, they're talking to me right now. Yeah. Right? So you can always be getting it.
Connecting.
So that's what I trust, and I always see that. But then switching to a guy is just based on reading him and knowing him, which is why it's so important to commit to this work and make it a lifestyle. Like the guys that come in and feel it and they do the 6 months and the weekend intensive, God bless, and hope it helps, or maybe even around for a year or two. But the reality is to truly shift a mindset from just thinking something to create another behavior to get a little bit of a result, to make that a full integration and that it's consistent, and to make this word change. That's steep. I don't know about people make change that really shifts. It's got to be a long-term commitment. Yeah. And so that's really, really critical. So looking at the guys that are making that commitment, and I know they're there, I know they're getting what they need. So it's looking at the guys who are a little bit more like, okay, how do we get this guy more involved? Or like the other night I said, hey, without using the guy's name, but said, check in on X man tonight. So it's just taking inventory and knowing, well, this rant where I was going was, I know all the men. We all know each other the longer you're there. So it's just an ability to be able to, like, going into a given council on a given night with a given group going, oh, these 2 guys, haven't heard from them in a minute. We know this guy's tendency, and he's been hiding out. I think it's time to call him forward a little bit. Or this particular prompt, I bet, is going to speak to these couple of guys more than a few other guys. And it might be a good night to activate him in and check in on where he's at. And then there's just reading the room. And again, that's part of intuition and instinct, but it's also pretty straightforward. Like, paying attention at all times, just watching the fidgeting, watching facial expressions, who's reacting to what at a given time, and then back to intuition and just knowing when to go for it.
One thing that works when I have my tribe together, and we're not doing similar work, we are in our own way, but is I remind them, if you're not gaining anything from being here, you shouldn't be here. And just, it sounds like what you're hosting, everyone has the intention to gain something from. They're seeking something. And if people are starting to tune out a simple nudge like that, like, remember, if you're not getting anything from this, you're in the wrong place.
It's also, I think, and that was kind of more for you. Sorry, I'm just going to lean in for a second. I think it's also important because you said something that I think keeps a lot of guys, keeps their intention in lock and in check, which is you come for the work, but you stay for the men. You know, even when things feel dandy and rosy and everything's cool at home and business is fine and whatever, you still show up for the men. And every single time someone's eyes will light up about something and they'll get something out of it. But a lot of guys, yeah, they'll fall back, they'll lean out, and they'll have expectations. And if you have expectations versus intention, it's a different,
Very different.
how you approach that. And so I see that with men all the time is they'll come with expectations. They'll be, you know, hyper business people and analyze everything and get analytical, and they'll judge it and be like, what's my risk reward? What's the net win here? Instead of just showing up, you know, and that's a big lesson, whether you're just with your kids or you're with your wife or your boyfriend or whoever, just showing up and being there versus like, what am I getting out of this? Why is this going to benefit me? How? Like,
Right. And that, what you're saying,
Yeah.
it speaks to what some wouldn't see as an obvious response to being closed. But that's being
Right.
closed, right?
Right.
We look at closed as more like my arms are folded.
Rigid.
I'm not listening, I'm rigid.
yeah,
But that mindset, or those, you know, this is where sometimes the smartest of the guys, the intellects, can be the most dangerous because they're overthinking and they're not open.
They're getting in their own way.
That's
oh
right.
God, yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
just show up and just go,
Be open.
everything and anything happening in here could be the thing that shifts my life significantly. And there's stuff available every single night.
It's entering a room with intention, right? If there's anywhere that you're going to do that, I would think it would be a men's group. It's not, in my opinion, it's not easy to get a man in a group.
Oh gosh, this is what we were talking about
Yeah,
earlier about
right.
the process when
Yeah.
we said one sit-in.
God.
And this is why we ask for them to pay for the month too.
Yeah.
The quote trial month. There's no better. I don't have an eloquent term that fits this the spiritual realm, but it's a trial month.
Yeah.
And men pay for that because men value what they pay for.
Right.
And
And you're speaking their language.
Yeah.
You're speaking the language. Yeah.
That's right. So
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
What's your process for learning? Like you just said, I mean, not you just said, I've seen you over the years. You go and you will even go join other men's groups for a weekend on their retreats and see what they're up to, and just go and throw yourself into it. What is your process for not only that and why you do that, but even just your reading and the music you find to get us more grounded and the practices you learn, the way you evolve group. What's your process for learning, researching, and implementing into the men's group?
Yeah. Well, my first thing that comes to mind takes me back to corporate days. And so this is where I immediately go, oh boy, let's be careful here, because it's
Don't be careful.
methodology, process, you know, like, but when I hear learning, I still believe that learning comes through four things. One is you need to be listening to it. You need to experience it, whether you're seeing, listening, whatever your primary mode initially is. Then you need to write. And so I'm telling you this 4-step process because it's what I'm doing without getting into the specifics of who I'm listening to or where I'm going to get information or, you know, my own lab going deep inside. But it's important, I think, to qualify these 4 things, you know, to listen, to write, and then study, and then execute.
Would
So-
it be, oh, I'm sorry.
Those are the 4 steps. So therefore, I'm always doing that. I'm just making sure I listen and take as much in as I can. And then I write and journal, just like we ask guys to do all the time as a wonderful modality. And then I study it and look at the information and I play with it. And then I go and implement it and try it and find out what's working, what guys are responding to, what they're not. And by using that 4-step process, that's my actual answer to learning. But the things that you just mentioned, getting more open to what other men are doing and what they're offering and being able to benefit by all the value and that they're putting out there. There's so much great material, and just discerning what feels good, what feels right for conscious man, because none of it is bad or good or right or wrong necessarily. I just use the word what's right for conscious man, but what feels like it resonates and fits into our culture and our dynamic of what we're doing.
Because some things stick so heavy, and some things obviously not everything's gonna stick. But like even like the 3D man, for instance, like how did that come to be? Can you explain what that is?
Well, that's something that I learned just in my early years of men's work. It was just brought as an example of living a multi-dimensional life, like what the 3 dimensions were that were introduced to me, that at some levels I've shared with other men, is just something that's a prime example of just learning from the wisdom of another man and other men who were living that way. I just then expanded it into, well, what fits for conscious man? To me, it's like living a multi-dimensional life, like not being one-dimensional, unless that's what you want. But then let's take a look at it and see if are you being really heavily one-dimensional? As an example, are you living in the masculine? Are you really, really heavily weighted masculine is one dimension? And if that's working for you and that's all you want to be and you aspire to be, then great, we'll support you in that, because we're not here to tell you what the formula is. But experience has shown that too much heavily weighted in one dimension, whether it's masculine or whether it's feminine or whether, call it like spiritual, or over the years we've talked about Clint Eastwood, Gandhi, or Curly from the Three Stooges. However you want to label dimensions, there's all kinds of dimensions, but of recent, it feels really good to look at masculine and feminine, and then this spiritual or otherworldly bigger dimension. And so we're just advocating that we be aware of that. Back to conscious, why the word conscious, I always look back and think now, like, boy, conscious man really works as a title for our community.
It does.
All we're doing is just looking to shine a light on the things and make sure that we're seeing and aware of like the choices we're making, how we're showing up, and where we might want to be a little bit different. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but that's what the multi-dimensional man is all about, what it has been specifically in terms of 3 dimensions. But there's so many dimensions, and some guys have challenged that over the years, saying, don't you think there's a lot more dimensions? Yeah, absolutely. We're just dividing a few to make a point, to identify, are you expanding yourself to be multi-dimensional, or are you like really in one lane, and is it working or is it not?
Excuse me.
Because the potential is where stuck can come up again. You know, if you're like, if you're finding yourself stuck, then maybe just shine a light on what dimension are you living in. And you know, for a lot of guys nowadays in particular, it feels like, at least in the decades of my lifetime and the going on 3 decades of more conscious men's work, at least the last 2 of them, more so than the first 8 to 10 years, a lot of the stuckness might be coming from the unawareness of that these multi-dimensions exist, in particular the masculine and feminine. And that could open up a whole nother subject for us to talk about, and I'm not the quote expert in this area at all. But just being aware that it exists and bringing it to the circle and letting other men pull the string out on it and talk about it to however it shows up for them. But this can really, really start to release us and help us get unstuck when we start coming into greater consciousness or education, whatever you want to call it, awareness, that we have this divine masculine and feminine that lives inside both of us, and being aware when does it serve us and when doesn't it?
And it's amazing how we feather both in based on what's going on, whether it's an argument or it's showing up for someone that it's not doing well, or it's a business move or whatever it is, how we use both. I mean, you can be a man, the type of man at work that is all alpha all the time, whatever. And as soon as you go home and your wife or kid calls you out and you go feminine, you get real. It's just amazing how we balance through those things, and how you can almost always point it back to how you were raised and what was normalized for you. And yet it's like you could say everyone's different, but we're more alike than we think because of those things. And you can find something, and that's why in group, when we're talking and some guy's eyes light up and you say, come for the work, stay for the men, you stay for the men, because there's only a few things that we all do as men, and you'll find yourself in one of the men talking no matter what. Whether you do the opposite of that thing or you're doing that thing,
right? You
can find yourself in a man,
right?
Which sounds like a weird statement, but
So would it be fair to, it's kind of piggybacking off of you going to learn new things and all that, would it be fair to say that your own evolution guides you where to go, like what you need to work on, I'm sure comes up from, like, we're mirroring each other, right? You're in your group, the men are teaching you things that you didn't know you needed to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it there in those times, like, oh, there's something just came up, I got to go find a source to fuel that for me so that I can bring it back?
You're talking about now me
You
specifically,
personally,
not
yeah,
figuratively you.
Yeah, no, you.
You know, that's a great
yeah.
tie-in back to Ben's question of learning and
Yeah.
what motivates you to learn, or how is your learning, or what's your learning process. And it is like the men are guide. Yeah, it's this beautiful reciprocity of like, I can bring in some stuff, and having, you know, the most experience in the work compares to, if we're comparing to most of the men that are sitting in circles. And so that's true, but the reality is, you know, learning from the guys and witnessing how they're showing up or not showing up, you know, leads me to go out and find more information to bring back in that may speak to a guy or a couple of guys.
Like they guide you to the research you need to do.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful full circle. I love that.
And I even had a guy the other night say, which was another one of those supplies, like those moments of like hits, like it's like, ooh, that just filled me up. That I'm going to drive home feeling, that's all I needed is that one tonight. And it was a validation that, you know, hey, thank you for going out and leaning into other men's work and being humble enough to believe that you don't have the answers, but out there's some guys that may have some things that can be useful that you can then bring back to us.
Yeah.
Because we can go out there and find these other ones too, which is fine. But once you have a community, a true community, and you have a tribe, these are your men, these are your brothers, and this is what I think we're all looking for. And we can't be a part of, you know, 25 communities and 40 tribes. Like, you find your people and you find a space that feels good for you. And so I'm constantly looking to go out and bring back what I think and fits into what we've created to get together.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was really neat that he acknowledged that.
Yeah.
And I had that moment of receiving, like a lot of guys do, where, you know, it's like, okay, make this quick. I don't want to, you know, and then, you know, but part of the masculine is to just pause and hold it and receive it and give that space for this guy who wants to give this love.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I'll receive that. Thank you. And then I'll move on.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So that was a really nice, what we call toss. And when you just like tossed a nice little thing to me. It was very short, very succinct, and very clear.
Love those.
Yeah. So it inspires me to do more.
Yeah.
It reminds me to, like, I don't have to create everything. I don't have to know everything, because I don't.
It's all right there in
and
front
I don't
of you.
want to.
Yeah.
Right. So
you actually have created it for yourself by holding the space for men.
sure.
They're bringing you the answers
Right.
of what you need to do to continually bring it full circle and serve them, which serves you, which that's so beautiful, right?
Which
La, la, la.
is part of, you know, where does the intuition come from? Where does the what's the other word we're saying? Instinct. You know, it's all tied also into passion and
Do you
drive.
guys use the word God at all in your group?
Not really.
I don't think so.
I don't recall hearing it much. No. Why
Do
do you
you
ask?
believe, well, intuition and instinct, I don't use the word God very often, but if I were to, it would be there, in that sort of there, like, those are your answers. Those are the great spirit guiding you. That's your instinct. Your instinct is your answer. But it takes clarity to trust it and to hear it first and then trust it. And that's your power. That's your roadmap, in my opinion, to life. And nature is part of that, right? But that's why I was curious, because a lot of times the word God, people use that word a lot when they don't understand something that's bigger than them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just a choice.
Yeah, and it's welcomed. I mean, you know, for what I have said over the years, I know I'll speak for myself personally, and I think other men have kind of been in a similar lane, is, I might reference, something greater than you, or, your God, whatever your God may be it a deity or a higher power, a belief system, whatever you want to label it as. Like, that's kind of the context that it comes up.
It's nice that is non-denominational the right way to say it. It's nice that it's free of any kind of attachment like that. I like that you can, for this long, to know that it's not come up.
No, I mean, well, we talk about the three standards around the no violence and what happens, physical violence, what happens to our state leader, no drugs and alcohol. The only two things that we're not about are politics and religion.
Nice.
And that's not to, I mean, politics and religion serve very useful purposes, clearly, in the world. But within the context of the work we're doing, they won't serve us. Other than to illuminate and reveal, like, emotionality, or guys that are reacting or having a thing happen, which then, when that happens, somebody will say, well, we're not about religion. And I'll say, oh, hold on, but we're not on religion right now. What's happening is we're seeing something about this man. So as long as the religion doesn't take over the topic,
right.
and everyone's getting fired up about, who their God is and what their beliefs are. But if it's about showing a reactionary experience for a guy, we can tease that out for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is, I'm tying this into why I think the word God hasn't come up a lot, is because most tie it to religion in some way. And we don't focus on or put much energy into religion and politics. And year over year, it's not a problem.
It's great.
Most don't need it,
nice
or they're not interested in it. There's just plenty of other things to look into and experience and feel. So
something that just popped into my head, you've said a couple of times your 3 requirements or standards. Yeah. You say physical violence, very specifically. You say physical.
Yeah.
What's your stance on language? Like, do you prefer nonviolent language as well? Does physical, is that incorporated into that, or do you allow a little bit of violent language just to work through things?
Oh, for sure. That's why those standards are made very clear that they're the only ones. And when Ben brought it up earlier and said no violence, I said no physical violence.
Yeah. And I heard that very clearly a couple times. So
everything else is welcome, that. And that's part of the secret sauce.
Do they understand that you can curse and whatever that means?
Yeah.
That there's a freedom there.
Heck yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, full hell yeah. There needs to. This is the whole reason for creating this space that doesn't have a lot of rules and regulations and guidelines, and why I'm just calling them standards. I don't even want to call them rules.
Yeah.
Rules are like
Boundaries.
kind of put men or male humans in a position to, like, I've got to behave,
right?
Which is already part of conditioning. I better be a good little boy. It's like, we don't want to be conditioned even further to be good little boys. Like, we're men who are going to be messy and operate in a way and show up in a way that may not be desirable or maybe put offish. And that's good. I want to encourage that comes out, so then it can be reflected. Because if a guy was being over the top, and it's rare, but it does happen. Certainly, it's not rare that a guy is, saying, "Hey, fuck you." Like, that'll happen.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like, that's great when that happens. And then, because what happens is you have 2 or 3 guys that are like, "Oh my God," mom and dad are fighting. Those 2 guys are fighting right now.
Right.
And then you might have a couple guys that are salivating, going, "Yeah, get at him. Go say fuck you more," And then it's like, well, what's that about for that guy? But
exactly.
It just needs to be raw and
primal
authentic.
and feral.
Heck yeah.
Nice.
And then we'll even encourage it for guys who are really articulate or softer or don't want to use it. It's like, how about, pull it out. Let's see it. And it's not because we're saying make that a part of who you are and use it all the time, but it's tap into that energy so that it's in you. Yeah. And whatever you're doing to suppress it and hold it down, it's not serving you, and it's not serving, let's say it's, your romantic partner is a woman, and it's not serving your wife or your person. And it's not serving the planet. It's also not serving to run around saying, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. But the idea is to just tap into that thing that's happening. So therefore, to put barriers around what language could be.
Right.
or even pointing, or even standing up, and posturing. It's like, I welcome all that, and it's wonderful when that stuff happens. And
Revealing.
it's revealing.
Mm-hmm.
And it always culminates and results in, whether it's in that few moments or that night, but at some point in time, those men coming back to clean that up a bit and
Yeah.
like tap into what was that really, and then whatever happened between them, realizing it wasn't about the two of you. It was about a reactive thing that you have inside of you and how you were wired, and how you on the other side then reacted or responded to it is about you. But it's not about Bob or Jim, with the label of the name of the guy or the guy.
And knowing the difference between reacting and responding, it's huge. A lot of people don't put that into play in their daily lives.
Right.
It's something, being a parent, really, for me, it was an important daily thing to remember to react or respond versus react.
Definitely.
But that was my childhood trauma, right? So it was fresh in my mind. Like, I don't want to do this to my child.
This makes me think about, and I'm sorry to not
No, please.
take that in deeply, because I appreciate you putting yourself out there with me, and we're all just people sharing our experiences. And but this really lights up an important part of the conscious man culture and community. What I think guys really enjoy is it's about this space to be this authentic. The lack of rules and regulations, because I think the rules and regulations are wonderful. They serve in a lot of ways. It helps guys be aware before they're going to act in a certain way. It certainly helps to grow a business, a men's business. I've said that I believe that the more rules and regulations makes it more scalable, and it's more commercialized.
Okay.
And it makes it to do it the way we have it now, and to expand it out, let's say 3, 4, 5, and certainly a multiple of 10 or more, larger than what it is now. That's really tough the way it's designed, because other guys I network with that have been in other groups or other men's communities, or lead them and have sat in or have these lengthy talks with me, are like, God, that must be so hard to curate that culture and lead that culture and support that culture. It's really hard. To lead it for a night, maybe not a problem. To lead it for a month or two, several sessions, not a problem. But to curate a community that operates like this is really, really difficult. And I'm not saying this to toot my horn. I'm emphasizing the uniqueness of it.
Right.
Because I have a couple guys that just came in recently from another group or community they've been a part of, which served them, and it was great. But I can see them kind of wide-eyed going, am I allowed to say that? They're like, you have to fucking say it.
Yeah.
Like, say the thing.
Yeah.
Like, don't sell yourself out. Don't sell that guy out. And don't sell this counsel that's happening out. Just say and do the thing. And that is not to say we want it to become an F fest or a
Right.
language fest. It's just when it arises, whatever's happening, do it so that we can play that energy and move it around, and then you can get it reflected back to you. So it's so important.
Yeah.
So important. But I wanted to make that distinguishing point, to whatever extent this is about conscious man community and what we have. That is one thing that I think a lot of guys at the top of the 2 or 3 things that they'll say that they appreciate about it is they can come in and it's their space, not my space. 2, that they can just be however they want to be and need to be in that moment, because they know that's going to lead to way more learnings that are available.
Yeah.
So-
It's too bad we don't run schools along those lines, allowing children to be more who they are,
Yeah.
with less boundaries and more movement and all that. But that's a whole change of subject.
But a lot of guys say on this, though, that I think this might be relevant enough to pull it one more minute, is that they'll say, somebody might say, you look like you, or I in particular might go, you look like you got something else going on there. And they'll go, yeah, but I'm really aspiring to be a man that doesn't react that way, so I don't want to do it. I'm like, I'm glad you're aspiring for it, but you're not there yet. So release it. Like, release this. It's important to release it. What will that do? Well, first it moves the energy, and then you can get into contact with even further how much you don't like it. Or you might go, actually, this is okay. It might serve me from time to time. Like, if my wife unloads on me in a way that is completely outside of how she prefers to operate, I'm like, excellent. That must mean there's something in there, and I'm here to hold it. Bring it. I love that. I celebrate it for you. I celebrate it for any guy that is able to release it. And then maybe, just maybe, that was the last time he needed to do it for some time, and maybe he's never really had the space to do it. So it's really important I believe, to have this space where anything and everything goes, except no physical violence.
You're right.
You got to know that I can get up and deliver a message to you, and this much bigger man than me is not going to come and harm me. Yeah. And that we typically will look to culminate it in a way that brings us back to center and love and care and gratitude for what's just happened. And it happens all the time, which again feeds this thing of like, it's incredible. It feels so good. So,
well, just real quick, and if you don't want to talk about it, it's cool, but not to give away too many things from our group, because it's sacred and I love it. But like, we have something called clearing. We do what's called a clearing. So we'll start group, and then Chris will kind of say, any clearings, anybody? Anyone got something on another guy you want to get off your chest or just bring to light? And that is something that is so rare. Like
in a group, like in the group clearing, or just anything you brought to this room today, like my outside stuff?
No.
Like me, you, and him.
Yeah, like if
I'm mad at you today.
Well, kind of
that kind of thing.
Kind of. If we had a group the last week and something he said rubbed me the wrong way, or he's been doing something that's been pissing me off. Maybe he's not showing up and he's late, or he's not conscious when he comes in. If he's late and he's noisy or whatever, and we're all trying to settle in and get connected, and it could be anything.
He doesn't capitalize his.
Most guys will. Most guys will just ignore it. It'll go away. It'll be fine. Screw it. I don't need to say that. It's fine. And that's how we generally do things. Or we hold it for so long, we just blow up one day. Instead of saying, hey man, I kind of got something on you. I'm not feeling clean about something. I want to talk about it. Can you explain how important that is and what that process looks like?
Yeah, I mean, the clearing of itself is like, it's clearing it out. It's an exorcism. You're exorcising it out, of which all comes back to energy again. You don't want to store and hold that energy, because we've only got so much, and we'd like to use it in places that are much more useful, I would think. And so clearing it out is the idea. And then it puts us in a state where our relationship is clean. And it's another part of like why the guys fall in love with each other in a deeper way than I suggest that they will with any of their fraternity brothers, high school friends, men that they meet through their kids' athletics or the school system. Those are all great relationships, and I've had them all in my lifetime. But in these circles, so much of this stuff that I would say feeds the safe and sacred create the relationships that are beyond the understanding or beyond anything that we've had. And one of them is you don't need, in fact, you're again tagged with the responsibility to not hold anything on another guy. And then we'll talk about how that's more of a feminine trait. Where usually when we ask a guy that might be married, say, or how's a girlfriend or something, and say, have you ever been in that situation? These are the parts where I get worried about these things, and then I don't want to take the energy back at me if this is like received as a bad thing to say. But it's a reality. And say to the guys, like, when your woman brings up to you something you did like 2 years ago or 5 years ago, it's like, you've done that. You always do that thing. It's like, it's a more feminine trait, and we don't want to do that. As a strong masculine self-centered man, steady, you don't want to walk into a room and be holding something on another guy. Like, powerful men clear it, and then there's ways you can clear it with your partner too, your woman, in a way that's more eloquent and sweet, but it's just not a healthy trait. And I would suggest probably for men or women, like, why do you want to hold this list of stuff? It's like, you want to be in a healthy enough, safe enough relationship. And I know that I foster it in my relationship at home. It's like, we bring anything and everything to each other in a way that is to receive it from the other person as a gift that says to me, you don't want to hold that on me. You don't want to use that energy, that precious energy, to keep that thing stored, and then it creates a barrier between us, and then resentment happens, and on and on. We can go way out on this subject. So our process in circle, and one of the things that's great amongst the men in the community or in these tribes, is they don't hold things for an extended period of time. But they might for a few weeks. But eventually it finds its way out. It says,
Yeah.
you know what? I've been holding this for a little bit, and I'm selling you out, and I'm selling our relationship out, and that's not cool. And so then we have a process of facing each other and sharing what the thing is, and then asking
Eye
the other man-
contact is a big
well,
one.
yeah.
It's the biggest thing to deliver, not look at the candle in the, which I do sometimes. I'll talk to the candle in the middle of the room versus to the guy's eyes and deliver that message. Eye contact, humility, and just saying the thing, the hard thing, the thing that sucks to say that you didn't want to say because you want things to be all cool and pretty and with a bow on it. That is the thing.
Your generation, I don't think, has had a lot of experience at having eye contact and having
No.
hard conversations. And
No.
and I understand that that might be difficult for you just based on your age, you know. That's very cool. It's one of the things that's very endearing about you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I find myself now, thank you for saying that. I try really consciously to, like, when I'm talking to somebody, catch myself
Yeah.
to, like, recenter. And when they're talking, really look into their eyes, like, listen to them. Like, really, I brought that up in group one time when I was talking to a friend of mine, and I just listened with my eyes. I just looked at them and I just held it. I didn't go on my phone. I didn't tap stuff on the table. I didn't pick up a pen and click it. I was just listening and watching in there. And that offers a whole new level of trust with somebody. And I got that all from group. It's all from group. It's all from just slowing down and listening and looking. It's everything. So going back to what we're talking about in group, when you clear with somebody, to look them in the eye, see the humility, see the pain, and how hard that must be for them to bring up in the first place, to hold that and receive it and go through the process that we go through, where it's, you know, this is what I'm not trusting about you, and yada, yada, yada. And I won't give away the whole thing, but it's a really special thing that I find very hard to bring into the real world. And we talked about this before. Me and Tana were talking about this, like how often I'll be sitting with a friend of mine and we're having coffee or lunch, and we'll talk about a mutual friend or whoever it might be. And they're frustrated. They're talking about this person, and they're telling me, and I'm like, well, did you tell them that? Did you say that? Did
Right.
you offer that? Did you get? And it's like, well, no. And I'm like, well, why? It's so foreign. It's so hard to do it. And we might blame it on that person, saying, oh, they won't understand, or this or that or whatever. But you need to do it for yourself. It's not even about that person necessarily. It's about you. You're holding it. You're building this black cloud for no reason. And I think it's
Yeah.
incredibly important. You know what I mean? So,
Well, which is what we end up doing then is discerning, was it really about that person, or was
Exactly.
it more about you, right? So it's like the person might be receiving it and done a great job to hold the space to receive it, and then be kind of confused about, what do I do with this? But we might look and go, you don't need to do anything. And then we put it back to the guy who's delivering it.
was
This is
about
more about you.
That face right there,
now
I've seen.
yeah, that
that was so good. I felt that. Like, all right, hold on a second.
Ben's received that face a few times.
It felt great.
But back to the purpose for clearing, a purpose for clearing it in the circle is, otherwise we don't want anyone to carry that energy, and otherwise they're not going to be able to be present and give everything.
Well, and you find yourself looking at people sideways and not knowing why later on,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a specific example that Ben was just referring to, and yes, I agree. Women are guilty of holding on to things that don't serve them or anybody else. It's something, there's an emotional connection to stuff that we seem to have that doesn't serve us, and that's part of our lesson. But but when it sneaks up on you, when you're like, wait, why am I looking at you side? Why do I feel funny about you right now? And you have to then dig deep and be like, what's my part in this? I'm the common denominator in my life. What's my part in this? What am I holding on to? What am I holding on to? And sometimes there are people who can't receive the truth, and it pushes them further away to tell them the truth, to tell them, you know, hey, I feel funny about this. But
Well, we're afraid
you
to lose.
holding
We're afraid to
on-
lose that relationship. Is what's happening, and it seems like there's been. I mean, just
I guess to simplify it, I'm trying to dig and
I mean,
see
let's
if
think.
the-
If
is
I mean,
there
this starts to go
another-
into a whole nother place. But when we talk
Let's
about
go.
the women movement, right? Like just where women have been and rights, and
Yeah.
it's like women have been in essence told to stay quiet. Like your vote doesn't matter, even going to that, or your voice, or you in power in other places of titled power places. It's like, you don't have that right. You don't matter. So with that message being sent, how does a woman feel confident and comfortable enough that, hey, I'm going to bring this forward to a man, and especially a man that I'm loving and sharing relationship with?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be looked at as, the B word or something. I'm going to be looked at as a bitch and nagging. And it's like, no, you're being powerful,
nagging.
and you're bringing it forward, and a man should be able to receive it and like say, thank you. I'm glad that you're telling me about this. And how can I look at this more? And how can I understand you more? And this gets super deep, but this gets to where relationships can go into this extraordinary space.
Well,
And
that is a little bit more directly like an intimate relationship. And I agree with you. I'm wondering what you might have to offer when it's not an intimate relationship, but it's someone who is close to you.
Just a friend.
Just a friend, but it's someone who's deep in your world, and a capacity that they're at, whether it's a mental illness thing or beyond.
Or just that's just how they are. I mean,
Usually a lot of cases there's some chemical imbalance these days. I mean, we're not healthy people. We're not a healthy culture.
Right.
And that's part of how we're not understanding each other. But, mental wellness isn't handed out at birth. It's, you have to work to
You gotta earn it.
to have it.
Right.
And we're often misreading each other, and therefore we have no tools to be there for each other, to show up for each other. So I guess my question is, and if you don't have one, that's fine too, the answer, but how do you approach that angle where you know that it doesn't matter what you say, that person is who they are, and they're usually unable of receiving any kind of criticism, and it can really like rip the rug out from a lot of stability for both of you. Is it worth it to clear your side of the street, like to get that frustration out, to do it there?
And so the way you just framed that to me is like, now we're like kind of moving into counsel together. Is it worth it? Like when you say that, well, that's for you to decide.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to support your process in answering that question.
Okay.
As an example, for me, relationships that, as you're saying, are intimate enough that these folks are very relevant and part of my world fairly regularly, if not regularly. I can't be on purpose, my greater purpose in life personally, but others can examine how does it fit into their purpose or not. But that's what I do, is I look to see, does it fit into my greater purpose? Because if it doesn't, then I'm just selling myself out, and the relationship really isn't that meaningful. It's a false positive again, because I'm having to behave in a certain way. And so I would lean into like what we talk about. I'm going to risk it. I'm going to risk it for the
And
chance
say
that it's
something.
going to embetter it, if they're able to receive it, and if I can hopefully deliver it in a way that is compassionate and sweet and caring. But
Compassionate.
Brene Brown speaks of clear is kind. Like that really sums it all up.
Yeah.
Clear is kind. And if you're not, you're selling them out, is what we'll say to the men. You're selling me out if you don't tell me the hard thing. And if I can't receive it, that's on me. And if it jeopardizes the relationship, then what was the relationship? And it starts to get into some of that.
So there's a little bit, sorry, just because you said the word that I was thinking, compassion, this is the angle that gets confusing for me. Like, if I know this about you, that it's going to rock your world if I speak this truth, is it now, am I being selfish by having to say this?
Right.
Or like, am I being a compassionate human being by acknowledging where you're at and meeting you where you're at?
And that's our
Do you
process.
understand what
Again,
I'm
in
saying?
counsel, we need to figure that out for you or help you come to resolve.
Right.
So you need to tell us it's Sally Sue or Billy Bob or whoever the person is that you're having the thing with. And then the collective will come up with questions and ways to expose where is this coming from. One of the
Chip it
questions
away.
I love and have get quoted on a lot or made fun of in a loving way is I like to go, but what are you up to?
Oh yeah.
Not what are you doing, where are you coming from, but like, with
Well,
that
my
twist.
answer right there is I'm trying to hold compassion for this person who may or may not know their situation. And the more you learn about me, maybe off camera, you'll understand where I'm coming from. But mental wellness is sort of the root of this.
Mhm.
And I just don't know, like, I have a hard time. Who am I to tell you how to behave?
Mhm.
This is on me that I'm feeling sideways about it.
Mhm.
That's how I kind of take it. Like, because I'm my common denominator. So how do I process this?
Well, let me
does it
introduce
help
this.
to say something to them, or is it better if I go sit, in the dirt and connect?
And I would say, so again, we're opening counsel right now, which is cool. This is like what we do. And I might say to you, when you say, who am I, to put that towards them? And I would say, what if the rest of the world is experiencing them similarly and it's doing damage and it's causing other people to pull away?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you to not give them that truth and give them the opportunity to see it and experience it
Why
and
you're
possibly
always
make a
yelling
change?
at me.
I know. Well,
He's always very gung ho about, you gotta say it.
Well, this is the thing, and
It doesn't mean it has to happen every time, right?
Right.
It's- This is the discernment in a counsel to go, okay, well, who's the other person?
Yeah.
Oh, it's my mother, and this is the situation. Here's what, we don't want to go too deep. It takes a
Yeah.
long time, but we get
Yeah,
a sense.
right.
And it might be, okay, well, what are you up to? Why do you need to tell her that? Or what are you up to in hiding back from it? And it's just exposing yourself as to what your truths are and where you're at so that you can sit back and go, maybe I don't need to do it in this situation.
Yeah.
Or I'm hiding.
It's
I'm
time.
scared. It's time.
Yeah.
Right. So
Very
this
good.
is what we
Very
do.
good. That's very juicy.
And this is
I
one
like
thing
it.
I wanted to. This is from the poem we referenced earlier. I'm going to read it to you real quick. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. If you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy.
Read that again. That's one of those. You have to read it again.
Really,
Read it again.
But that
Yeah.
even just that first thing, I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. That's some real shit. And
Yeah.
we all deal with that every day. Coworkers, friends, family, moms, like dads, everybody. We deal with like, I shouldn't, I should. But inside, you're just building this whole new category of resentment.
Passive aggressive.
100%. And we
Yeah.
all do it. We all do it.
Yeah.
But this is the practice. This
This
is
is
the
why
whole
we
thing.
clear.
Yeah, this is why we
Yeah.
clear.
So going back to the men, because you also said when you opened into this a little bit more, and you said, yes, you're right. I mean, we as women is like, it's not really totally about women though. It's just about that part of femininity. And
Thank
And
you
so-
for clarifying that, because I felt I wasn't acknowledging it properly with that answer. I was summarizing.
because it almost
I didn't mean to.
makes it seem as though like, and women are bad or women are
Right,
wrong in this
right.
area.
Always.
And it's
Yeah.
not saying
It-
that
yeah,
at all.
yeah.
It's just saying that is a part of femininity.
Yeah.
And then you have to look at as a man, does that fit for you? Does that feel whole and right and centered?
As a woman too. You
Yeah.
need to look at it.
Sure,
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
And so what we're advocating is that there can be a greater, stronger level of masculinity, in particular man to man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how you deal with it with your woman is going to be different because we're different.
Right.
We're men and women.
Right.
But with a man, it's like, don't hold that stuff on me. That doesn't go well with me. That doesn't sit right. And if I'm doing it, it definitely doesn't sit right.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're teaching and advocating that we practice, because everything we're doing every week is all practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're just coming in there to show up and do our practice of manness, whatever it is. And that's really a super important one, is to make sure that the room is clear and clean with one another so that we can then do the rest of it. And sometimes we don't ever even get to the rest of it because the clearing starts just going.
Yeah.
And now we're doing what we've been doing for the last 15 minutes. We're just riffing about what that is all about and how does it happen for us. And
Which means that was your work for the day.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So clearings are really important because they fundamentally can be executed and clear and
Yeah.
serve.
Yeah.
And they can also just create stuff,
For
which
sure.
is the one thing we didn't talk about on this is like what is happening as I see it in Conscious Man. I've defined the work into two places. One is when we're solving something. Like I bring to the table, hey, I have this challenge in my workplace with this particular person, a business partner or whatever, and I need help. And then the men go into solve mode. That's easy. That's low hanging, and we feast on that. I personally enjoy it more when it becomes the second category, which is harder to define. It seems like existential is a place to put it, but it's when it just starts moving into stuff and things.
Yeah.
It's not about solving a thing. It's more about what we were just doing now. It's
Yeah.
more about, and sometimes guys, like if we're moving on something for 10 or 15 minutes, a couple guys might check out like, what are we even doing here? And I'm like, oh, hang with it. I promise. Well, what is it specifically? And I will sometimes humbly go, I don't know.
Right.
I just know we're doing something
We're being open.
and we're going to find ourselves in a place that's like, oh, at some
Yeah.
point in time, usually.
Yeah.
So we're being open for sure.
Yeah.
We're being open. Yeah,
being
exactly.
open.
We're just being
We're
wide
just
open.
being open.
It's a practice.
We're being.
Yeah.
How about that?
We're being, but
Just be.
totally. But you can just be, and you can just be closed, and you can just be open. So you kind of got to lean into one of them because just being is fine, but it can get a little slippery. For me at least, I notice like I have to choose if I want to be open or I'm going to be closed. Or I'm going to be a little shitty and be closed. Like you have to choose one, and that's hard for guys to be that aware and be like, you know what, I'm going to be open. I'm going to be open and lean into that side of it and really connect and listen here and like not respond with just an answer because I'm feeling annoyed that he even whoever brought this up in the first place. I'm going to listen and not have a thought while they're talking. Just listen, and then when it's time to talk, I will speak and I will come from my perspective instead of just being closed and being certain you are right or wrong, whatever.
I
So-
think that is just being though. Like you were talking about bringing a group of people together that have all of this energy and all of this, and that it's hard to relax into being focused on whatever's happening right there. And I mean, you just kind of defined it as just being. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm tracking with you in that. But,
Like, you don't
but we
have
struggle
to-
with that because it needs to be to an end.
Right.
Right, guys, we want to
There's a-
connect. We want to connect everything. And what
Right.
you're saying is sometimes we're just being and letting it just be. And
Oh,
it starts to
that's-
get
okay,
woo-woo-y. And it's,
I got
Yeah.
But the reality is just hold on, hang in there. Let's just keep flowing together.
It's not that there's no there's no end goal or what, but that is the end goal. Just relax into this moment without the fidgeting, without the
Absolutely.
be.
And that's fantastic. I just meant for me as a person, like for me, to me, it goes under the category of being conscious, like being conscious how you're showing up in a certain moment. And just being is awesome. And that's my favorite place to be, is just to just be. But like when there's something happening, a trauma, someone's coming after you for something, an uncomfortableness, you then have the choice to decide if you're going to be open in that moment and deal with it in an open fashion where you're vulnerable and present and there, or if you're closed and you're running from it or whatever. There is a choice in that. I'm just meant in that specific kind of realm. Just being in general is a whole other thing, and I totally agree with that. I just want to be clear about that. I want to clarify.
I think
Does that all make sense?
I think so. I think we're kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's just
I don't-
important that we're agreeing that and seeing the value in, and I think this is important for you, Ben, potentially here, is that there's times where you're trying to figure it out. You want to figure it out, and you don't have to just figure it out. That's what I hear Tawny saying about the being, is that it's not about trying to figure anything out. We're just being right now. We're just sharing where we're coming from. We're just riffing. We're moving around, and then we start to go, oh, and then something will typically come from it.
Exactly.
So it's just a matter of being open.
I'll just edit the whole part out. It's fine.
No, don't.
No, I'm kidding. I feel like I wasn't being clear because I still see it as something else. I mean, I'm not explaining it right. I've seen people, especially my own family sometimes, and not mostly men, but a lot of times men, they'll just see red in their clothes and they're angry and they're just firing off at the hip with words, or they're just quiet and closed and they're not conscious at all. And so like I've had moments where I have to catch myself and I have to be like, no, I'm gonna just calm down. I'm gonna be open here. Like to me, that is, to me, in my realm, I see that super clearly. I also see what you're saying about just being available and being there and just being.
Oh yeah,
that's great.
Those are two different.
That's two different things.
Yes.
I want to make sure it was clear,
And
because
I understand what you're saying now.
sometimes there is a choice to make,
For sure.
and there's
all
yeah,
the time.
right?
There's a choice.
That's
to
all I
make.
was trying to get across.
All
Yeah.
the time.
That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of this started from clearings,
Yeah. Right.
which are so great and
Yeah.
so important, whether they're in our circles or whether they're, in romantic relationships, whatever those look like. Just being able to, it's really just saying, can I be bold enough? Can I care for myself enough? Can I therefore care for this other person enough to step forward
Yeah.
and say the hard thing?
Yeah.
And then let's go from there. But getting back to within our circles, in the container of our circles, why it's so important is because you can trust that the collective around you is going to guide you through it.
Yeah.
Because guys start rocking back and forth. They're uncomfortable, as Ben said earlier, looking away. They just want it to be over. And so many times I'll just step in and I'll just go, hold on a second. Just be here. Just be in this. Notice. Something's happening for you.
Notice your discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that discomfort? What do you mean the discomfort? I don't want to do the discomfort. I've got this thing going. I just,
There it is.
what is the discomfort? And where else is this showing up in your life? And
Yeah.
it's just, there's so much.
What's our other favorite saying? How you show up one way is how you show up at most places or everywhere. What is it?
Yeah, how you're showing up anywhere is how you're showing up likely everywhere.
Yeah.
That's which got shortened to everything.
Everything. Yeah.
But that's what it's really
Oh.
saying is
Yeah.
like paying attention to it. And but the depth of what we go into in these circles, like it just like what we're doing now is we're kind of doing a council, which is cool, without making it about each other too much.
Right.
But we're just talking about all these concepts and things that go on, and it's
Yeah.
and with a lot of rules and regulations on it, it just makes it difficult to really get to some stuff that's really rich and deep and broad.
That makes sense.
So,
Yeah.
That's my favorite part about the way we do group, because there's no agenda. We won't sit down and be like, okay, today we're going to talk about this. And we don't ever do that. It just starts. And before you know it, it's time to check out and go home. It's like, what the hell happened? How did this? It just flows. And that is so,
It's important.
absolutely.
That's how.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to express about this podcast.
Yeah.
That this is an open space to be, right, and bring whatever the message is that has led us all to be in this space right now, because it's there. We're aligned for a reason, and if we allow ourselves to just flow, it'll be revealed in a very organic way. And I've learned a lot about myself just sitting here talking,
fantastic.
and not to mention the obvious, learning about what you do and who he is, and just filling in all the blanks. It's a beautiful process.
It is, and if we're moving towards winding it down, like one of the messages I realize all the time that this is like what I love about it. Why am I in it? And why do sometimes I take it on personally, or I'm still frustrated if guys don't get it, is because I know all of this. I don't know all the things. I don't have the answers. I just know it's a space that works. It just works.
Right.
But you've got to be open. You've got to come in. You've got to not have a timeline or an end game. And then I get concerned. Guys think, oh, it's part of strategy around the money, and like, oh, if you. And so sometimes I'll self-deprecate and make fun of myself
wow,
when,
interesting.
like, a guy will go, something like, well, this just happened, and now I've got this whole new problem that's going to unfold at home. And I'm like, excellent, because if you fixed it, that'd be a terrible business plan. Like, right? And it's a joke to say that it's going to take a long time, but it's what I know the truth to be is it's an incredible space of complete openness and rawness. And my belief, my bias is that if you don't have that space as men to work together, you're just going to keep spinning out, and you're going to go right back to the places that you've been before. And that's why for 28 years, I'm still in it.
Yeah.
And I just have the selfish benefit of being in the same, with men every night, or with men, whatever, several times a week. The other guys, well, Ben has the unique benefit of being in 2 nights a week, but other guys only get it once a week. I get it 6 times a week.
Right.
25 times a month, I'm sitting in circle with men going, oh my gosh, I still do that. I don't want to do that. But my job's to facilitate and guide. And, Ben's always like, you participate. I'm like, I'm not here to participate. I'm already participating, but someone's got to lead it. And so it really works. And the whole idea is, can it be better for our women, for our friends, or for our romantic partners, and then therefore for our children, for our parents, and for the world we live in. That's right. And it's one tiny little place, one tiny little community doing it one man at a time, one council at a time.
My response to somebody who challenges you on sort of the business of it, or however you just said that, would be, again, kind of throwing it back to, is your instinct to be here? If it is, that's what you're getting from it, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're saying you to
the person who's saying,
is your instinct to be here?
What's your business plan, or that kind of thing, right? Like, for you, I'm sure there's plenty of men that want to be a part of this,
right?
Through people like Ben, through word of mouth.
Yeah,
it's hard. It is hard though. It's hard to wrangle, like he said, to wrangle, even to get guys to respond to the messages he'll send on our group chat, which I'm guilty of sometimes. The day gets ahead of us, and to get men to wrangle their brain. And I don't want to relate it to the drug addict, but you kind of have to, because they won't do work on themselves, a drug addict, until they decide they have to.
Oh, Ben, that's across the board, just the human condition, we'll say. I stage 4 cancer just a few months ago, like a year ago, we'll say. And treated mostly holistically. I've never done chemo or radiation. And people come to me every day. They saw my journey through Instagram, Facebook, whatever, because I had to ask for help. And people were cheering me on, and still cheering me on. Is such a beautiful thing to be open and receive on that level. It's scary as hell.
Yeah.
But all that being said, they see me thriving, and they still won't. They ask for advice, and they don't take it.
Yeah.
They go right to chemo and radiation. They go right to the, do you know what I'm saying? And I'm not here to bash Western medicine, but the point is, you don't get there until you get there. Everyone, you can't tell somebody, or it's just complicated. It's a complicated thing. And when you are seeking to elevate your frequency, you're going to find it. It's going to find you, and you're going to find it. And people need to listen to their instincts, because that's their guide.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I'm going to look forward to infusing that into what I say when I'm hunting men. I call it, I'm a hunter of men.
Yeah, please
so Ben,
do.
where you say you struggle, this is where the next level is, when you pause for a moment and go, what have you really witnessed? Like you, for sure, amongst some of the guys in our community, you've witnessed the shift in yourself. You've witnessed the shift in other men, and you see the men around you that you're bringing this to as a possibility, and you know what it likely could do for them. Not the specifics, because everyone's journey is different, but generally speaking. And you have to feel into that and be willing to get rejected repeatedly. I look at the guys sitting in this room here in Santa Barbara, and there's a few of them that I have gone after and after and after. And it's not like I'm badgering them. I mean, there's some discernment, but it's just seeing, and it's just infusing the passion of it. Like, come and show up for a month. You're not committing to anything beyond that. And see if it's something that resonates for you. And now that's where that instinct thing. And then let your instinct be the guide. Your instinct will tell you if there's something there. It doesn't have to be that it's academically laid out in front of you that A plus B equals C.
Yep.
But you got to be willing to risk the rejection, risk the judgment. And that's what I do over and over. But it's exhausting.
Yeah.
but I chose it.
Yeah.
I chose it. And so, I've just now labeled, like this guy that just got referred to me from a guy in group, and he connected us on text, and I said, oh, great to meet you. Let's talk tomorrow or the next day. Gave him times, no response. Do you just let that go? Well, I guess he doesn't want to talk. Oh, I got to go back again. Let a few days go by and say, hey, you must have had some kind of interest. And if you didn't, then at least just say, F off, get out of my face, not interested. Nothing. Now what do I do? And then I let it go like 10 days and then said, you know what? Trust my heart. And reached out and said, are you getting my messages? You must have had some interest. And then he responded, oh, my notifications were off. I had so much travel. Thank you for being consistent. Yeah, I can talk tomorrow. I don't know what that becomes.
Yeah.
But that could become Ben.
Yeah. I mean, I used to do sales, and a lot of the fundamentals are exactly the same. I mean, it's all the same fundamentals. I just, I also find myself protective of group and not wanting someone's energy that doesn't want to align with something like that to come in and then kind of ruin it for me.
Can't.
I know.
Can't.
My mind
Trust
goes
the
there. I know
process
it's
takes
wrong.
care of
but
it every time.
Yeah.
And people are afraid to move rhythmically because they're so malaligned.
Yeah.
They don't trust what that is. Like, I'm feeling drawn over here, but I feel a little funny about it. It's because they're bogged down by electronics or whatever. That it's a foreign language.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we're missing. So I understand your need. It's not a need, your urge to go back and say, hey, did you get my message? Because you see what you can offer to them. It's this podcast for me is my gift back to those who supported me. If I can help eliminate any kind of suffering and research time and just loneliness in the process, this is where you can hear it and you can take it or leave it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be here talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it might take 10 times for you to go through the whatever brutal path that isn't working to get to a gentler way, to get to yourself, just to get back to yourself. Because no matter what you're deciding, what you're going through, if it's mental or emotional or physical, the answers are there for you. And we're each individuals. So it's not a one size fits all situation. So to just be consistent in your offering is vital.
Vital. And to that point, that's why we have weekends intensives, because that usually speaks to a potential that a guy will then, okay, well, I can extend myself for one weekend. And then we design the weekends to tap into all kinds of different possible places and these different dimensions we talked about. And usually by the end of a weekend, almost to a man, there's this feeling of like, that was good. Like, I want more of that. What's that? And so that's
cool.
why when those weekends come around, they're so precious. And I'm like, just get a guy there, get a guy there, and it could change everything.
Yeah.
Are you able to speak a little bit about the weekends? Can you explain a little bit what they are, what we do?
Have you've done a couple weekends?
Oh yeah, no, I'm the ones that we do initiation weekend where we have like oh, that's fun.
What was that?
My light just died right there.
Oh, I was
my
confused.
God.
I'm like, the power didn't go out.
Well, that's
that was wild.
Incredibly important. We need that.
That light?
Yeah, that's my light.
Hmm.
Wow.
Oh, does that never happen?
No, it doesn't. But I have a. It's so annoying. Hold on, folks. 1 second. For those at home, our light on camera just died. But we're coming to a close. So, what's next for Conscious Man? What evolutions inspire you, and what do you want to experience as just the man, Chris Christopherson?
Great name, by the way.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Boy, that's I love the question, and I love it because I do have thoughts and feelings around it, and maybe even saying visions, like bigger picture for me. What would feel amazing would be, and it's already happening, like doing this in other places, like the weekends in particular.
Yeah.
So going up and supporting, shout out to Harry Neff up in Spokane, and supporting his weekends a couple times a year, where he's taken a lot of what he got from Conscious Man and curating his own feelings and thoughts and putting into these weekends and going there. And then there's also a shout to Chris Gould out in Colorado and starting a group there, and we took it out there in June. But it's expanding on that. It's doing more of those weekends in other places, and even bigger is around the world. So Jennifer and I's twice yearly international trips, I'm always talking to men and going right into it, whatever culture we've been in, and seeing that they respond almost similarly.
Global. That's
Global,
beautiful.
and not to create a global brand and make
No.
it big, because I'm just not going to be that guy. I'm clear, unless it just happened. It had to happen. But there's so many guys that feel into this and do this at such an expansive way, where they're more teachers and interested in being the guy. Like, excellent. That's not. I just don't see me being that. What
But I
do.
think I'm sorry. I just think it's important that we do see how different cultures around the world be, how they live, and it could really elevate what you're doing and your groups in general. I'm just supporting. Sorry, I think it's a great
as an example, like I
calling.
just met a guy at the wedding who he gets funded significantly to go around the world and do like philanthropic things when disasters are happening, and helping to build places and do things. And I said, man, I have some bandwidth, and I've always wanted to be of service in a greater way. Put me on your list. I'm happy to rappel into a place and give a few weeks or whatever I can. And he said, well, where I think this would work is if you came in and actually did men's circles when we're in tough places. And I went, and then in that moment, Jennifer looked at me and went, now, does this become the thing? I don't know. She goes, this is what you've been
powerful.
wanting.
Yeah.
So, this is what I wanted a few years ago, was the thought of how do I take it from just Conscious Man weekends to elsewhere? And, now, Harry's invited me into his space, and then how does it go global? Because I enjoy meeting people and their cultures, and sitting in Bali and Belize and Spain and talking to these guys, and then sitting down and having some depth to it, going, oh, this would be so cool to do some men's work here. And now this guy goes around the world and is funded significantly to do these things. And so maybe I'm saying do that. So personally, that would be very fulfilling.
That's happening. It's already in motion. The seed. I mean, it feels like the only move right now.
Right. And he asked, well, how, I feel you, and I trust you already, and I feel like you're the right guy. But why would you say you're the right guy? And I said, because I got the balls to do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I saw in the guy that I witnessed lead for so long. And that's what I enjoy when I see other guys that I feel like they've got it. And that's what I said to you the other night when you're leading group. I'm like, it's yours. You're the leader that night. Like, own it. And I have very little hesitation or worry about leaning into when I'm seeing a moment, that instinct and intuition, and just going for it, because I just don't think there's a thing like it won't work out.
Right.
It just may not culminate into some extraordinary experience, but you got to have the cojones to step up, lean in, and take chances when you're feeling something and seeing something. And I just see more and more where these things are available, and I'm willing to do it.
Yeah.
And so that feels really great. But that's really big and really broad. Shorter term, like bringing it back right now, is I would just like to, like, where is enough? Like, where is it big enough before you'd have to expand to social media and market and do the things that other guys are doing a really great job of that I'm not interested in. And I'm thinking I just would like to build a couple more groups. I think a community of about 75 guys feels great. Right now we typically hover around 50 guys. And I think like 2 more groups of about 12 guys or 75 guys. So this gets very specific, but I've thought about, like, that would be great. It takes care of my needs personally, both in terms of monetarily, but in terms of touching enough lives. And then I'd like to be at a weekend in some way, shape, or form, Conscious Man or supporting another, like every other month.
Amazing.
And
That's
so,
how you manifest it, though, by being specific. That's how it happens.
Yeah.
You just called it in.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I've
And
been starting to get more clear about it. So
I look forward to the next time we meet, talking about your first global trip. I mean, what an immediate need for your services than those situations that you're talking about, that you're not afraid to go into.
And just empowering these men to then do it, which is
Yeah.
also tied into what I'm wanting to do now. And I keep telling Ben, and like Ben is part of the leadership team. He's not just a man of service or a guide. Like, he is part of the leadership team on these weekends. He knows what to do. And so do the other guys that are part of that now. But most importantly about that is that they're 30-somethings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm 56. I'm moving into an elderly stage at some point in time, and not too far from now. But the generation of, you know, like my son who's 21 and committed and doing the work and just loves being around it. And then
That's great.
Ben and Chris and the guys that are in their 30s, like empowering them to then do whatever they want to do and keep it going. Like that's the really, the legacy of it is really, really critical. And as we get older, legacy becomes more and more important. And so,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for having us in your home. I always love coming out here, and you guys are so gracious. And before we started, we had a cacao ceremony in here that Chris led with his wife, Jen, and got us in the right foot to get grounded and settle in. So thank you for having us. And for those at home that have interest in Conscious Man, you can go to conscious-man.com or on Instagram, it's consciousmanaho, A-H-O. And feel free to reach out, ask any questions. You might just get Chris himself to be giving you a call and talking about stuff, and we're doing great work and excited about it. And we hope to hear from you soon. But thank you for having us. Looking forward to the next one. And Tanya, you got anything?
No, just thank you. I'm in deep gratitude right now.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you
Yeah.
for letting me say a bunch of stuff.
You said you did great, man. This is great to have you.
And yeah, and you're incredible. Like, just flowing right into all of it. And it feels like, you know, your capacity to listen and feel and care, it's strong. And
Thank you.
it's only in one sitting, so.
Yeah, we have.
And it
we have-
reminds me that men and women can sit and do this.
I know.
'cause that's really exciting.
I always want to go to men's group after talking to them. I'm like, I need to go, but also need to respect that you got to be.
Well, we're going to do a co-ed event at Marie and Reed's.
That's
Oh,
right.
right.
I'll tell you-
August,
yeah.
like
Oh, I'd
August
love
31st
to
or
be
something.
there.
We're going to do a
Yeah.
whole like cacao and meditation, and then we're going to do a hollow breath, and then we'll do an integration circle at the end. So it'll be like a 4 or 5 hour evening.
Amazing.
I
Beautiful.
hope to be there.
You will be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris,
It's been an honor to have you.
truly.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. That was my first podcast.
Look at you.
Oh, awesome.
I've always said no because I don't know, it felt weird.
Yeah, it's not weird, man.
But
you're-
I trust Ben. I always say I feel safe when Ben's around. This curious safety. He's just so like he's got you.
No, he's
He's the man on the spot.
a
Appreciate you.
magical creature for sure.
love you guys.
Love you.
Love you too.
Happy
Aho.
trails, everybody.
We usually at the end we'll say aho, so let's all say it together. 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
Wow, that was something.
Sorry, a little loud.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.